State travel allowed once 90% adults fully vaccinated. And Malaysians urged to stay vigilant as country moves into endemic phase. That's coming up. The government will allow interstate travel once 90% of the country's adult population is fully vaccinated against COVID-19. According to Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, this includes allowing interstate travel to tourism destinations and resort islands across the country.
In a press statement today, Ismail Sabri said tourist attractions including zoos, snorkeling and fishing will be allowed to operate for states under all phases of the National Recovery Plan NRP starting October 1st. Meanwhile, he also announced a few states that will be allowed to move to the next phases of the NRP starting September 24th. The states include Negeri Sembilan from Phase 3 to 4, Pahang from Phase 2 to 3 and Johor from Phase 1 to 2. Additionally, Ismail announced that convenience stores, mini-markets, restaurants and petrol stations will be allowed to operate from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. starting tomorrow. The government also announced the reopening of spas, wellness centres and health massages to fully vaccinated individuals, given that staffs are also fully vaccinated.
The Education Ministry revealed that 90.5% of teachers nationwide have received 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine as of Monday. According to Minister Dr. Razzie Jadin, any teachers who have yet to or did not receive their vaccination would not be allowed to teach on-site. He also revealed that a total of 2,100 teachers have refused to be vaccinated. He said the ministry has discussed the situation with the Public Service Department and they will bring the matter to the National Security Council for the next course of action. He also said that the Education Ministry will supply COVID-19 self-test kits to boarding schools and day schools under the ministry as part of preparations for school reopening in stages starting October 3rd. There have been no positive COVID-19 cases reported involving tourists visiting Langkawi since it reopened under the Travel Bubble Initiative last week. Kedah Tourism, Arts and Culture Committee Chairman Muhammad Firdaus Ahmad said that so far all COVID-19 cases on the island involved locals. According to him, this is due to the successful implementation of SOPs at KLIA. Firdaus was answering a supplementary question from IATAM Assemblyman Azhar Ibrahim, who wanted to know about the impact of SOP implementations on tourists in Langkawi during the State Assembly sitting today. It is crucial that Malaysians remain vigilant as we move towards the endemic phase of COVID-19. Professor of Health Economics, Hospital and Health Management at University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Professor Dr. Sharifah Izzat said that although 80% of the country's adult population is fully vaccinated, there are many groups that remain vulnerable to infection.
If we are to include the children population, so-called the adolescents and children population, that means from the 12 to 17, we might not be there yet. So we still have to move forward and basically vaccinate our children and adolescents to achieve the really 80% covering not only the adults but also the children and also the adolescents. We have to be careful because we don't really know how big is the Delta problem in Malaysia. We know Delta problem is a major concern worldwide. We know there are the rampant so-called VOC in US and also in UK. And we know that they have, by majority, they are the champion among our VOC as well in Malaysia. But we don't know from the new infections or from the infections in Malaysia, how many % from these infections are due to Delta. We don't really know.
Sharifah lauded the government for achieving the 80% 2-dose vaccination rate milestone on Monday, but she highlighted the importance of genomic sequencing, especially as the country slowly opens up borders, putting the population at risk to more mutations of the coronavirus.
Of course, we have already seen that Malaysia is opening up our borders and we are opening up our trade and basically our tourism, and also we have people from outside coming back into Malaysia, coming again into Malaysia. So basically this also exposed us to the variants coming in, although they can also occur locally. You don't have to wait for someone from, let's say, from other countries to come in. They can actually, the variant can, or the mutation can basically occur locally as well. So we do need to do or continue doing the genomic sequencing by the Ministry of Health and also by sectors which are involved. And this is very necessary for us to know how big is the problem of VOC in the country.
In the pipeline, she added that the government must plan booster doses for high-risk groups, as well as vaccinating children under the age of 12.
UMNO veteran Tengku Razali Hamzah has resigned as chairman of the Party Advisory Council. In a letter to Party President Datuk Sri Ahmad Zaid Hamidi, he expressed his disappointment over the present political situation, where certain UMNO leaders had collaborated with Bersatu, despite a resolution of no cooperation in UMNO's General Assembly in 2020. In the letter dated September 20th, the Gua Musang MP, fondly known as Kuli, also questioned if the newly formed cabinet will be able to garner public confidence when the 15th general election comes. This is because, according to him, nearly all cabinet posts in the new administration were filled by those from the previous failed government, which has caused concerns among the public and party grassroots members. Meanwhile, Padang Rengas MP Datuk Sri Muhammad Nazri Abdul Aziz was of the opinion that Kuli's resignation was due to not being chosen as Prime Minister in the new administration. We will take a quick break. Stay tuned.
Kita bulatkan tekad dan bersatu hati untuk terus memelihara serta mempertahankan kedaulatan negara. Sebagai keluarga Malaysia yang besar, kita harus bertoleransi dalam semua perkara. Hormat menghormati serta mengekalkan perpaduan rakyat yang berbilang kaum, agama dan bangsa, serta integrasi nasional silang budaya adalah tunjang kekuatan kita sebagai sebuah negara bangsa yang berjaya. Umpama selembar benang dikait, ditenun dan dijalin, akhirnya menjadi kain yang sempurna indah.
Welcome back. The first-of-a-kind bipartisan MOU between the government and opposition is a good first step toward administrative and parliamentary reforms. However, Transparency International Malaysia cautioned that some key items were missing in the MOU that may impede its overall objectives.
So the first thing that we have suggested is or we have questioned why the political financing bill was not put in the MOU to be tabled. As a matter of fact, the political financing bill is ready. If some of us will recall, just before the Pakatan Harapan government collapsed, the bill was almost to be tabled in March 2020. So the bill is ready, and this is very important because, as we know, there's a lot of money politics going on, not only in general elections, by-elections, and even party elections. Number two is the separation of power between the Attorney General and the public prosecutor. This has been talked long time. In fact, it was already in the manifesto of the Pakatan Harapan government before. And the reason for that is there is a conflict of interest because the AG plays a role as an advisor to the government and the cabinet. And then at the same time, he also handles the prosecution part.
Dr. Mohan also urged for the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission to be placed under the federal constitution, as MACC is currently governed by a parliamentary act.
When they put it under the federal constitution, the MACC reports to Parliament, and especially the appointment of the Chief Commissioner for MACC will be coming through Parliament. At the moment, the appointment is by His Majesty the King, recommended by the Prime Minister.
He urged for the reforms to be immediately through the spirit of consensus across party lines.
Of course, at the end of the day, I call the two big brothers we have is the Honorable Prime Minister Dato Sri Ismail Sabri and also the opposition leader Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim. Both are seasoned politicians, seasoned lawmakers. They know what they are supposed to do. And it is, I think, as two big brothers, they should even if the younger brothers, siblings quarrel, they should at the end of the day come and say that, look guys, let's get this done with, and let's get going with. After the next election, if you want to go separate way, that's a different thing.
Popular Manila Mayor Francisco Domagaso announced that he will run in the presidential election next year, giving the opposition a candidate that can mount a credible challenge to incumbent Rodrigo Duterte, who critics say is trying to stay in power through proxies. The 47-year-old former actor, better known by his screen name Isko Moreno, is the third politician to run in the May 2022 election, joining former police chief Panfilo Lacson and world boxing icon Manny Pacquiao. Moreno, who grew up in the slums, was a child scavenger before becoming an actor, then entering politics. He promised to fight poverty and took aim at Duterte for his alleged failures in managing the COVID-19 pandemic and corruption. While Duterte himself is barred from running for the presidency again, he has accepted his party's nomination to run for vice president, a move seen by political observers as a backdoor to the presidency. A rare magnitude 6.0 earthquake struck northeast Melbourne today, damaging buildings and sending tremors throughout neighbouring states. The earthquake, which centred in the rural town of Mansfield in the state of Victoria, was among the largest quakes on Australian record. No injuries were reported, although officials warned of further aftershocks in the coming days or weeks. The quake resulted in 6 aftershocks, with the highest at 4.0 magnitude. Earthquakes are relatively rare in Australia's populated east because it is positioned in the middle of the Indo-Australian tectonic plate. The quake on Wednesday measured higher than the country's deadliest tremor, a 5.6 in Newcastle in 1989, which resulted in 13 deaths. Meanwhile, authorities in Victoria say they would come down hard against further protests after thousands of people demonstrated in Melbourne against COVID-19 restrictions.
60 people were arrested on Tuesday after more than 2,000 protesters damaged property and injured 3 police officers. Minister for Police Lisa Neville warned people to avoid entering the city and said she had ordered police to use any means necessary to stamp out unrest. Protesters took to the streets following the state government's announcement to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for construction workers. Building sites were also told to shut for 2 weeks to slow down infections. The state recorded 628 infections on Wednesday and 3 deaths overnight.
China told the United Nations today that it will stop funding coal projects overseas and to increase support for green and low-carbon energy. Analysts estimate that China's retreat from coal could wipe out $50 billion of investment in the market. China's President Xi Jinping made the pledge at the UN General Assembly, promising to help the world battle the climate crisis. Although critics point out that Beijing's own domestic coal program is still propping up dirty fossil fuel, contributing to climate change. Xi's statement came hours after US President Joe Biden announced a plan to double financial aid to poor nations to $11.4 billion by 2024 so that these countries could switch to cleaner energy. Depending on when China's new coal policy goes into effect, 47 planned coal power plants in 20 developing countries could shut down. Yesterday, the Prime Minister announced that 80% of Malaysia's adult population has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. But can we let our guard down? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests for their thoughts on this milestone. That's coming up right after AWANI Tonight. That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching.